Imagine you are a traveler in the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, drawn to the legendary city of Babylon. The air is thick with the scent of exotic spices, roasting meats, and the dust of 1,000 sun-baked bricks. As night falls, you are drawn by a sound, a hypnotic, rhythmic chanting, accompanied by the low thrum of harps, echoing from the towering ziggurat that pierces the twilight sky. You follow the sound, pushing through crowds of silent, awestruck citizens, until you stand before the colossal bronze gates of the Temple of Ishtar, the goddess of love, fertility, and brutal, merciless war. The gates swing open, and the scent of incense, heavy and sweet, washes over you like a wave. What you are about to witness is not a common ceremony for the masses. This is a secret, sacred rite, an act of cosmic importance that blurs the line between the divine and the deeply, dangerously human. Inside, in the flickering torchlight, you see her, the high priestess, a living embodiment of the goddess herself, her body adorned with the sacred symbols of her power. She is not preparing for a prayer. She is preparing for a god, and the ritual she is about to perform with the king will determine the fate of the empire for the year to come. This was a world where devotion was not whispered in silent prayer, but enacted through the flesh, and where pleasure was a key to unlocking the power of the heavens. To understand the soul of Babylon, one must first understand their relationship with the divine, a relationship built not on fear, but on a desperate, passionate desire for connection. In the arid lands of Mesopotamia, fertility was everything. It was the difference between a bountiful harvest and a devastating famine, between a thriving city and a pile of sun-bleached ruins. The Babylonians believed that this life-giving force flowed directly from the gods, and that to receive it, humanity had to participate in the cosmic drama of divine creation. The center of this belief was the goddess Ishtar, a deity of terrifying contradictions. She was the goddess of tender love and procreation, yet also the goddess of carnage and warfare, a beautiful, seductive figure who could also be a wrathful, bloodthirsty destroyer. To please her was to ensure life. To displease her was to invite ruin. And so, the rituals performed in her name were designed to appeal to both sides of her nature. They were not hushed or hidden affairs, as later, more conservative cultures would claim. They were grand, public spectacles, woven into the very fabric of civic and spiritual life. Processions of richly adorned women, their garments embroidered with symbols of fertility, pomegranates, doves, and lotus flowers, would fill the streets during festivals. Music and incense would transform the air in her great temple into a heady mixture of reverence and raw, sensual desire. For the priests and priestesses of Ishtar understood a fundamental truth of their worldview: that physical intimacy was a mirror of the cosmic union between the gods, a sacred reenactment of the creation of the world itself. The most powerful and politically significant of these ceremonies was the sacred marriage, the hieros gamos. This was not a mere symbolic act. It was a ritual of supreme importance, performed annually to ensure the continuation of life itself. In this rite, the king of Babylon, the mortal shepherd of the people, would symbolically and physically unite with the high priestess of Ishtar. This woman, often of noble birth and possessing immense education and influence, was not seen as a mere mortal in this moment. She was the vessel of the goddess, her body a sacred altar upon which the fate of the kingdom rested. Imagine the preparations. The high priestess would undergo days of purification rituals, bathed in scented oils and adorned in celestial garments. The king would likewise prepare, shedding his role as a military commander and politician, to become the mortal consort of a goddess. The ceremony would take place in a consecrated chamber at the top of the city's ziggurat, a room designed to be a mirror of Ishtar's divine bedchamber in the heavens. This was not an act of personal desire or political convenience. It was a holy duty, an offering of the most potent human energy to the gods to guarantee the fertility of the land, the health of the people, and the divine mandate for the king to continue his rule. To the Babylonians, this was the ultimate act of faith. But these rituals were not solely about spiritual matters. They were deeply entwined with the rigid social and political structure of Babylon. The king's participation in the sacred marriage was a powerful piece of political theatre. It publicly reaffirmed his unique and intimate connection to the gods, a message to any rivals or would-be usurpers that his rule was divinely sanctioned. The priesthood, who orchestrated these ceremonies, solidified their own authority as the essential intermediaries between the mortal world and the divine. And for the common people, who would celebrate in the streets below, it was a visceral reminder that the gods were not distant, abstract beings, but powerful, passionate forces who were actively involved in every aspect of their lives, from the sowing of crops to the bonds of love. Participation was a privilege, and the most prominent roles were reserved for the elite, reinforcing the social hierarchy that kept the king and the priests at its apex. However, not all of Babylon's neighbors viewed these practices with such reverence. To the more ascetic and patriarchal cultures rising around them, particularly the ancient Israelites, the openness and sensuality of these Babylonian rituals were seen as shocking and depraved. Foreign accounts, written by rivals and conquerors, began to filter back, deliberately misinterpreting the sacred symbolism. They twisted the meaning of the rituals, painting Babylon not as a city of profound faith, but as a cesspool of decadence and corruption. The high priestesses were recast as common prostitutes, the sacred ceremonies as wild orgies, and the entire theological framework as an excuse for indulgence. It is these hostile accounts, written by those who sought to conquer and replace Babylonian culture, that would ironically come to dominate the historical record, creating the enduring myth of the whore of Babylon. But within the stones of the old temples, a different story lingered. It was a story of a people who saw beauty, passion, and desire not as sins to be suppressed, but as sacred forces to be honored. They believed that the act of human union could echo the very creation of the world, and that the pleasure of the flesh could be a bridge to the divine. Theirs was a worldview in which the human heart and body were threads in the same cosmic tapestry as the stars and the gods. Today, as we look back through the fog of centuries of misinterpretation, we can see in these rituals not only the sensual splendor that so fascinated and horrified later historians, but also the profound seriousness with which the Babylonians approached their relationship with the universe. It was a culture unafraid to weave intimacy into its highest expressions of faith, a reminder that for them, love and life were never separate from the sacred, and in that, perhaps, lies the truest legacy of Babylon's erotic rituals, a testament to the enduring human desire to connect, deeply and passionately, with one another and with something greater than ourselves.